Welcome to Why Work Sucks and What You Can Do About It. Hi, I'm Russ Briley, and I've been in business for 46 years, working with all kinds of different managers, all kinds of different executives and customers, plus coworkers of every variety you can imagine. And so I'm here to help you by telling you some that I ran into that might match your experience and what you can do about it. So let's start with a question for today. Micromanagers. I've got a feeling I'm going to get a lot of these. Okay, so bear with me, but micromanagers come in a lot of varieties. So here's one. He picks at everything. No matter what we are doing, he did it better. Soldering irons have to be cleaned a certain way. Everything is his way only, and he hovers all the time looking for something to point out. In meetings, he corrects spelling, fonts, even colors on presentations. Signed, Gary. Okay, micromanager, yeah? Well, not uncommon, and micromanagers come in a lot of varieties. This particular type may not actually be their behavior, it may be externally created. So let's get into what causes that. So a micromanager comes in a couple of varieties. One variety, yeah, they show up at work, they're like that to begin with, and they've been that way all their lives. Maybe it was the way they were raised, maybe it's just the way they like to do things. But there's also the one that has been turned into a micromanager because of business and the people that they have for employees and the people that they work for. So in the case of soldering irons, you notice the soldering iron thing has to be clean in a particular way. This is usually caused by a solder regulation and a customer combination. So, for instance, if you're working with the Department of Defense, aerospace, space program, or somebody like Apple Computer, there are going to be very specific guidelines on how you can do your soldering on a circuit board. There's a certain temperature for the soldering iron. There's a certain temperature because of the solder that you have to use, how long it exposes to the contact. Everything in that is controlled environment and controlled procedure. And this is in order to maintain quality. Quality is a big category that can cause micromanagement, and quality is on the uprise. There are a lot of different regulatory groups that do quality. And that can be driven by a government organization or a very picky consumer company. It can be covered just by going international sales and shipping overseas. This kind of stuff happens all the time. And in the case of like a soldering iron, those procedures are laid out by the letter, and you simply have to follow those guidelines. This is not really micromanagement, but it might be the way the manager approaches it. If they're picky about how you're doing it rather than instructive, might be a micromanager situation. If they are aggressive or negative or have a tendency to point out what you did wrong in front of everybody else, this could be bad training technique. So that a lot of things come into play here, but it's not the actual request to do it a certain way. That's not what micromanagement really is in a very strict quality environment. Now, I worked in a lot of quality environments where you had very specific regulations. Even the paperwork had to be done a very, very specific way. And it felt like I was being micromanaged. So, how do you deal with that? Well, first of all, get to know the regulations, get to know what the rules are, what the quality procedures are for what you are doing. This is really important because that stuff is spelled out for a reason. If you feel like it needs to be changed, there's actually a procedure over on the side for how you approach making a change. So everything in there is laid out word by word, 1.1, 1.2, A, B, C, D. They're very specific. Your goal is to just follow it the way it is. And I'll tell you the reason why you want to do that. It's because of the way management structures their thinking about you, the other employees, their counterparts, and the executives they work for. And it works from the top down and the bottom up. It's called understanding trust and understanding risk. All of these managers want to have high trust, low risk. What does that mean? High trust means when they have something on the board or they give you an assignment, it's listed as something to do, and you do it exactly as requested. That builds trust, and they want high trust. If there's somebody in the organization that's not as trustworthy, they don't do exactly what they've been asked, and they don't do it exactly the way they were supposed to do it, their trust goes down. They're going to get a lot of negative focus. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the one that has high trust. Risk. In business, you want to manage risk by keeping it low. Low risk means you have a lower risk of return products, low risk of losing a customer, low risk of having a penalty from a federal regulation. Whatever the risk is, you want to keep that low. A person with high trust factor tends to be automatically low risk. You just see how those follow. They go together, and that's what they're looking for. If you are not that person, they're going to come give you special attention, and you don't want special attention. So think of it in terms of how can I be the one they trust because I'm consistent. I'm there every time. And you want to be the one that they know for a fact is low risk. That's how you get into management. That's how they got into their job as a manager. Somebody above them had high trust, low risk in them. And that could be something as simple as this person is going to do what I ask them to do, and they're not going to try to make me look bad. That's a matter of risk factor. That's a matter of trust. But it could also be I simply know they're going to get the job done and they're going to get the job done right. So make sure you're the high trust, low risk person. Now, some of this other stuff in here, you're talking about how they hover. Well, yeah, hovering is a challenge, and it may be the way they started in their career. They may have actually been a supervisor on a production line, and their job was to go hover behind people and make sure that they're doing things right. It may have been the job description. It could also be they've had such a long history of low trust that they want to watch everybody doing what they're doing. It could also be that they don't have enough on their desk. Now, I've had managers who have stated clearly to me, if you don't hear from me, you're doing fine. That's one of the worst kind of micromanagers you can have. If you don't hear from me, you're doing fine means that you're personally at high risk because they could come down on you and completely blindside you. You don't know it's even coming. And next thing you know, you're in the hot seat because something went wrong. You'd rather have somebody who communicates with you. What you don't want is too much communication. And sometimes you'll have a boss that will hover over you and you feel like if you want to do it here's the soldering iron, you do it. It's just like if I'm going to sit here and you're going to hang over my shoulder, why do you need me? And it can be very, very frustrating. Again, the higher your trust factor is, and the lower your risk factor is, that will get them hovering over somebody else. If you're in a very small shop, it may not help, but hovering it builds stress. Let's get honest. It's just very stressful to have somebody looking over your shoulder. It feels like you're being tested all the time, and any little thing you do, they're going to jump on it. That risk factor goes up, that trust factor goes down, and eventually you're going to be so out of whack, you just got to go someplace else. So, if you are in that environment, if you've got a micromanager who is really picky about the rules, really picky about the way it's done, if it's written down and documented, you just got to do it that way. The customer may demand it. I think one of the things you have to really focus on here is when a micromanager is doing something that is not helpful, those are the ones that can get on your nerves. And they're the ones that are looking at something that is not written down, that is not part of the requirements, and yet they're picking on it. I had one boss that would come by and look at things on the desk, where they were sitting on the desk. Now, I have a tendency to be a stacker. I would stack stuff up. I know where everything is. It's right there. I know where it is, but it wasn't stacked the way he wanted it stacked. I had another one who spreadsheet, the columns had to be in the order that he liked. It had nothing to do with the customer, nothing to do with any kind of quality control. It was just him, the way he liked it. And it got worse when I did it his way, and then he decided he didn't like that either and wanted to correct it, and it was my fault. Oh, I just wanted to strangle him. I really did. And he wasn't even my direct boss. He was coming from the side. This kind of stuff, that's the micromanager that you really want to get after. So the micromanager here, picky about the way the soldering iron is cleaned. Probably not the bad micromanager. That's just quality control. Everything his way and he hovers all the time. Okay, that could be the micromanager that actually is evil. In meetings, he corrects spelling, fonts, even colors on presentations. All right, let's talk about that one for a second. I had several bosses that were like that. Several who wanted to have it done a specific way, a specific format. The background color had to be a certain color. Everything had to match everything he was doing. And he would get really fussy about it. He would even interrupt your presentation to point out that that blue didn't look quite right. Or is that font really 12 points or is that 13? And I didn't understand. Why is he picking on fonts and colors when the presentation is what's important? The content. Why aren't you focusing on content? You're focusing on stuff that shouldn't matter. It turns out that this manager and the managers around him were all taking our presentations and doing copy paste. This was on PowerPoint, but it can be any program. They would do copy paste one slide at a time and put it into their presentation. Copy, paste, and all the fonts and colors had to match up, and they would roll it up to management. And anytime you deviated, he had to spend time correcting your spelling, correcting your font, changing your colors, and it gets back to that trust factor and that ability to have low risk. If he just did a copy paste of my slide and there was an error in it, it became his error. His error, because he would claim the work. Now, this could get us to a micromanager discussion about what about my boss takes credit for my work. Get used to it. That's what bosses do. In fact, that's really the job description. They're in charge of the overall section, maybe the whole building, and their job is to be the person who makes it happen. So in a way, they're supposed to take credit. Now, if it's blatant, like you did all the research and they claim, hey, I figured this out. No, okay, bad. But when it comes to data, money flow, how the product is going out the door, quality management, all that stuff, they're supposed to own it. And owning it can sometimes look like taking the credit. And owning it can sometimes mean they take your presentation, copy paste into their presentation, or just use your whole presentation the way it is. Now, here's a beautiful thing that you would never think maybe. You go into the executive meeting and there's 12 executives reporting up to one president. And all of them have to give a presentation. It has to be, no more than 8 slides, no more than 7 minutes. So that, they've got all these rules in order to get it to fit into the meeting. And they're sitting there all stressed out. And one of the things they're worried about is font and colors and how fast they say it. And did they memorize the information because they didn't create the information? They did a copy paste. They're all stressed out over this. And if one of them looks different from the others, it can be bad. I remember one time I put my presentation in for my boss and I included pictures of the product. Oh my gosh. Pictures of the product. Nobody had done that before. I had a picture of a tank, and one of our parts went on that tank. And everybody's looking at the tank going, he used a picture. He used a picture. It was lucky, as it turned out, that new president liked the picture. He liked knowing what the product went into. And the very next quarterly meeting, everybody had to have pictures. Okay, got lucky there. Could have gone the other way just as easily. So you're sometimes getting picked on because they're getting picked on. You're sometimes more responsible for doing something that makes a difference than you realize. Maybe your presentation is the one that is the winner for your boss, and you're going to get a boost in how much they like you. That's going to be a winner. That's the path to getting promoted. That's the path to making more money and having a fantastic career. There's one gentleman I know who became CEO of a major $18 billion company because he made one great presentation in front of the right guy on the right day. He was actually a warehouse manager and became CEO of this $18 billion company because of that one presentation that kicked it off. You don't know when it's going to happen. You do know you need to be ready when it does. So, do you have a micromanager or do you have somebody who's a product of their environment? Ask that question. Are they looking for quality consistency? And that was the reason for them saying this needs to be done a very, very specific way. I'm picking on you because you're not doing it right. Is it a quality thing? Is it a procedure thing? Is it a thing that is required for a customer? And they're different between customers, so you got to know it and you got to do it that way. Ask that question. That's not a micromanager. That's somebody who is driven by quality. They're driven by customers. Next one. Is that person doing it in an inappropriate way? Are they picking on you in front of everybody else and it's getting out of control or they're using bad language? Okay, that's a different thing. That is when micromanagement and bad behavior start crossing over. So it's not a micromanagement problem at that point, it's bad behavior or bad management or bad leadership. In any case, ask those questions before you decide I've got a problem. The problem might be you. If they are doing something that is being driven by their boss or their peer group, that may not be them as much as it is their environment that they're working in, and you can find that out. If they are picky about a particular font, just use the font that they use. What's the problem? If they want it to be a particular size and you have too many words in a sentence, think about that for a second. I think it was Steve Jobs who said there should be no more than 5 bullet points and no more than 3 words per bullet. Okay, that's hard to do. They may have the same thing. I had one manager group that they couldn't have more than 7 significant words. They didn't want "in" and "and" and all these little words in there. They wanted big words in there, no more than 7 per line. That was the deal, and no more than 5 lines per slide. That's a picky person. Yeah, got it. But they may have a reason for why they prefer it that way, and they may be the boss's boss, or maybe that even higher person. So put it into perspective. Is this something that is being done to you, or is it something that is created by the environment? Is it quality? Is it procedure? Is it customer? Is it another manager in a higher level position influencing your boss? Can you turn this around so that you are the one who is always doing it right, always hitting the quality, always hitting the procedure, right on the numbers? And therefore, can you become the low risk, high trust person in the room? That's your goal. Turn it around. And if you're high trust, low risk, you will stand out above the others around you. That's how you get promoted. That's how you get more important programs to be in charge of. That's how you get to do things for the more important customers. That's how things happen. That's how you end up being approached by other companies or maybe even that customer you've been working with to get that next higher level job, higher level position, that next bump onto another career ladder. That's where those come from. Sometimes it comes from where you don't expect it. So look at that manager and realize people around them are going to be watching you. They know that they're all doing copy paste on their presentations and it's coming from somebody. If you're a product manager and you're giving your presentation to a vice president, the other vice presidents all know that too. And they're sitting there going, wow, where'd that slide come from? Oh, what program is that on? Oh, I'd like that guy on my team. Could happen. That's where you get up the ladder within your own company. Customers, though, are a great way to get on the ladder for a higher level in a different company. So look at this as an opportunity. A micromanager could be your way to the top. React to them in the way that they need and you may just make your fortune and your career go boom. So look at them as an opportunity, and I think you'll find out that there may be a good reason for it, and there may be a reason you can take advantage of. That would be my recommendation. Got a micromanager? See if you can take advantage of it and turn it into your own personal pot of gold. So if any of you have another question, drop it on in. I'd love to talk to you. Love to give you some answers on here. And Gary, thanks for that question. I got a feeling I'm going to be hearing a lot about micromanagers in the future. And you're never going to have a job without one, at least somewhere in the company. So get used to using them to your advantage, and you'll come out a winner.